And so it's possible that the people over at Google kind of figured out, look, if we ever get someone that just does a bunch of like potty talk or something,
Right.
that will have a little bit of code or a direction that will point it to do something fun, a little different.
Yes.
That's possible.
That's basically it. Yeah.
Okay.
It's all the same techniques, right? Like
Yeah.
when you used to have Siri to give you a compliment or do whatever, Siri would have these canned responses it would pick from and it would give it to you. And it was kind of funny.
Yeah. Welcome to Practical AI, everybody. My name is Jeff. I'm here with Peter Lynn. This is season 2 of Practical AI, and we are sponsored by Pocket AI. Pocket AI is a tool used to edit the weights of your model. With Pocket AI, you can prune over 60% of the weights of your model while increasing accuracy. Peter, there was a funny little YouTube video that came out. I think it was the creators of NotebookLM. And maybe you can describe kind of what happened. And then I wanted to ask you some questions just about how the architecture or how you suspect they pulled off NotebookLM. But first tell us about the little video that they created.
Yeah. So actually, one of the many AI YouTube channels covered a video that was an interview between a podcast and two developers at Google that work on the Notebook LM. And the story goes, somebody had taken a large Google Docs document with just poop and fart. Some are capitalized and some are not. And there's thousands of them in this document. And they fed it to Notebook LM to see what it outputted. And then they shared it on Twitter.
So just the words poop and fart,
Just poop and fart, just randomly poop and fart.
and it was
That's all.
fed in, and it was like basically NotebookLM. See if you can make
A
a
podcast.
podcast about with just these two words.
Just those two words. That's
So what
it. There's no
happened?
there's no and, there's no other words. Just poop and fart.
And what was the result?
So the surprising thing, so in the interview, the interviewer said, they asked the developers, like, did you see the meme, the poop and fart meme? And one of the developers, she said, well, when I first saw it, I was kind of afraid. And they asked her, like, why? Why are you afraid? It's like, well, I was wondering, am I gonna have to open up a ticket at 11 p.m. and have some engineers go and fix it because it's terrible, or is it gonna be interesting? And luckily for her and the NotebookLM team, it was actually pretty funny. What it actually did was it consumed the content and it produced this philosophical debate about what is art and is someone trying to punk Google by feeding in a document with just poop and fart?
Okay, so in the movie Terminator, at the opening, they talk about when Skynet becomes self-aware. Um, instead of just NotebookLM creating a podcast about poop and fart, it took at least one more step into doing at least part of the podcast about whether or not
Right.
it has been fooled to create a podcast. And that seems kind of interesting, almost like it's a different relationship with itself and the world to kind of philosophize whether it's being fooled
Right.
to create a podcast.
Yeah. So just to be clear, the developers at NotebookLM didn't claim that because obviously they wrote it, so they know how it works. They don't really tell the world how it works, but my best guess is they take the input document, they summarize it. They take that summary and they've written code that uses chain of thought or tree of thought or a combination thereof of a number of things, along with references. So, example, if your document is about cancer, it might go find oncology references. Or if your topic is about like barbecue, you might go and find recipes or, texts about how to do the perfect brisket, the perfect ribs. It'll take the additional data and the prompt, and it'll feed that to another language model to then generate the script for the podcast. And I'll probably do that multiple times because usually I've done an experiment where I fed a document that I wrote and it took about 25 minutes to generate a podcast.
Okay, so this kind of makes sense. So in the early days of Siri, you could ask Siri some weird questions, and the the fun guys over in Cupertino had kind of anticipated that some of these would be
Right.
asked, and so they 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 had sort of canned responses,
Yep.
that, and so it's possible that the people over at Google kind of figured out, look, if we ever get someone that just does a bunch of like potty talk or something,
Right.
that will have a little bit of code or a direction that will point it to do something fun, a little different.
Yes.
That's possible?
That's basically it. Yeah.
Okay.
It's all the same techniques, right? Like
Yeah.
when you used to have Siri to give you a compliment or do whatever, Siri would have these canned responses it would pick from and it would give it to you. And it was kind of funny.
Yeah. Okay, so but what you got into there a little bit was how they do this, and obviously we can't know because they probably haven't released really the nuts and bolts of sort of their architecture of doing this. But if you had to, now that you've seen what they've done, and you had to sort of design this, can you kind of map out the various components, what it's going through to get from an input to kicking out a podcast? NotebookLM.
Probably going to be more than a dozen components and at least probably, I mean, if I had to guess, more than six different models.
Okay.
Like
So what's the first model?
the first one is just summarizing what the content is.
Okay, so I
Yep.
say, here's a Bob Dylan. I want you to riff on this Bob Dylan article. The
Yep.
first thing it's going to do is it's going to summarize that article.
Yep. And then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to look at the summary and go, okay, what is the topic? Right. So my prompt in the initial summary is, it might be, tell me what the topic is, what the subject is, and what are the key points are in this document. That's going to spit out some result. And then I'm going to search on those topics and subjects and key concepts. So I'm
So
going to go
are
search either Google or the index or some other database. It's going to bring that in. And then I'm going to take that, I'm going to feed it through another level and say, okay, okay, now refine these concepts into, these chunks. And then from that, I might tell it, now try to produce me an outline or a script, right? So maybe the next thing I do is an outline. And me, the step after that is, okay, from the outline, now generate me dialogue for each section. And then once you have the whole entire thing, then feed that to a voice model to take the text to voice.
okay. So you went to first you went to summary,
Yeah,
right? And then from summary, you have a series of sort of decision trees or models or code that's
something,
going
yeah.
to generate prompts.
Um, it's gonna search for more content.
Oh, first it searches for more content based on what it parsed out as the
Yeah.
subject and key components.
Yeah.
And then once it has that more content, at some point it's going to start generating prompts so that it can figure
Right.
out. And how does that work? Is that code or is that
Again, it can be a model or it could be code.
okay?
I don't really know. But so those are the general steps because so if you were to take just the raw text and produce a podcast from that, it probably won't be very good for a couple of reasons. One, the writing could be bad. And so if you were to summarize the actual document and produce a audio podcast, it won't be any better, and it can't possibly be better than the original document.
Yeah.
The other thing is there could be factual errors in that original document. And so if you didn't search the internet or search a database for additional material to kind of verify, is this content correct? Is it valid? Right? You could end up producing a podcast that really is not really useful. And so this second or third step, I don't know what they're doing, but I would definitely search for additional content to then feed that to the next language model and say, okay, now take the original content, take this additional material, cross-reference and validate, and spit me out a better summary.
Yeah. And then when they were kind of designing this, do you think they I mean, I think I know the answer to this, but do you think they tweak the architecture over time because it's not giving the
Yeah, they have
results?
to.
They have
Yeah.
to, right?
Yeah. Right. Because when you first start, chances are whatever prompts you came up with aren't going to be good enough. But as people use it and file bugs, you're going to go, oh, okay, yeah, you know what? This set of prompts, they're not very good. We need to tweak them. And so as people use it and get responses, you can see what produced better responses. You can then tweak your templates for your decision tree or your chain of thought or tree of thought. And then, because when you do chain of thought or tree of thought, let's say you have a tree that potentially could be 1 to 1,000 layers deep. Well, you don't want to necessarily do 1,000 layers for every single request that someone says, give me a podcast. Like maybe going down 4 layers is enough, but maybe it's not. Like it depends on the subject. It could be, if you're talking about like oncology and cancer, well, okay, 4 layers is probably just scratching the surface. So you probably want to go deeper. But if
Mm,
it's cooking, well, same thing. But if it's like folding paper cranes, well, okay, that's pretty easy. So then like a couple references is fine.
sure. And then when you have bugs or errors in all of those components, can you isolate that and isolate your problem, or do you have to kind of retrain or rework all the way downstream?
Well, so I don't know. So me, it depends on how they built it. And in the podcast, both developers were kind of concerned, like, well, if I click on it, I'm gonna have to file a bug. And then some poor developer is gonna have to get up and spend the next couple hours fixing it.
Mm.
So obviously it's not a simple thing, right? Like someone will have to figure out like why did it break and how do I fix it and then actually implement it and then test it.
But the fact that they can even fix it in a couple hours without retraining says that it's probably more than just models there. There's probably
Oh
other.
yeah, there's definitely some there's probably definitely some simple things like okay, don't do profanity or don't do this or don't do that. And I'm sure they've got like handwritten code or rules or some kind of simple human written code that does the additional filtering.
Well, it's still a fun, it's a super like, um, everybody loves podcasts right now, but to be able to take any topic and spin up a podcast on it is really, really fun, right? And I encourage everyone that try it. NotebookLM's tool is one of the more fun things I've played with. That's been a product of this whole AI revolution.
Yeah,
Um,
quite good.
it is. It's impressive. Good stuff, Peter. Thanks for a little debrief on the possible architecture behind the scenes of some of these cool AI products. Please like, subscribe, ask questions. We'll be here and we'll be back next week with another topic. Take care, everybody.